This presentation, titled The Evolution of Supplier QMS Audits in Light of COVID-19, comes from Aiman Sakr. Aiman is a Principal Continuous Improvement Engineer at Dynex Semiconductor Limited, based in Lincoln in the United Kingdom. He is a certified Six Sigma Black Belt, a certified quality engineer, and a certified ISO 9001 lead auditor, in addition to being a member of ASQ and IEEE. Aiman has published 2 technical articles as a lead author and worked with ASQ and Quality Progress magazine as a subject matter expert on several projects. He obtained a bachelor's degree in electrical power engineering from the University of Mansoura in 2009. Since then, he has held several positions in the fields of quality and process engineering, mainly working within the high power electric and electronic components manufacturing industry. And with that, take it away, Aiman.
Thank you very much, Mike. That was a nice introduction. I just want to add some small detail about my experience related to this topic, that I have been responsible for the customer complaints for 2.5 years in the past. And for the last 6 years, I was responsible for the supply quality in more than one organization, which makes me aware of both sides of this process. So I know the expectation as a customer from this process, and also how suppliers feel about supply audit, what are the actions done to achieve customer satisfaction. And that's why the reason I chose this particular topic in these times, particularly since the start of the pandemic. The contents of this presentation will include, first, why do we audit suppliers? I'll talk briefly about the expectations of supply audit from the auditor's point of view, and how did the COVID-19 crisis change the purpose of supply audits. So no surprise here, COVID-19, I bet you heard this a lot. And in this difficult crisis, we're all going through due to the spread of coronavirus since 2019, and how does this affect particularly the supply audit process and the expectations of the new way, or what are the new expectations from this process. Then I will start to explain 4 suggested methods or approaches that can transform the way we perform supplier audits, so it can meet the needs of this changing world and deliver the best value in today's competitive and risky business environment. So I'm going to start by this interesting statement. So according to a survey by LNS Research, manufacturers with poor visibility into supplier performance have a median supplier defect rate more than double the rest of the population. So without visibility into a supplier's processes and quality management system, manufacturers risk receiving unreliable, low quality products from their suppliers. And for manufacturers, supplier auditing is essential to gain visibility into whether suppliers' products and processes are adhering to a defined quality standards. Do they meet our needs? Most importantly, will they help us meet the market needs? So, and of course, now we know that the market can change rapidly. So we will talk in more detail how this affects our process. Okay, in this slide, I will talk about a simple question: why do we audit suppliers? We have to start asking this question to ourselves. I, for example, as a continuous improvement engineer, ask this question all the time, because my job is to ask this question in any process. What does this process add to the company? What is the value added coming from this particular process? And this is part of the lean thinking. And to talk about the facts here. Generally, a company spends more than 60% of its total sales on purchasing raw materials, assemblies, components, and parts. So, valuation and selection of suppliers is one of the most critical strategic decisions for developing a competitive and sustainable organizations. Here in this slide, you will see I divided the reasons into two sections. One is the direct reasons and the other one is indirect reasons, or the after effect of the direct reasons. So the first reason of auditing suppliers is to provide visibility into a supplier's process and quality management system. So our direct expectations from the auditing process is visibility. And visibility means confidence that the way our suppliers do work will help us achieve our target, as they are a valuable part of our value chain. Number two here is to ensure suppliers are complying to our standard. And this is a more of a technical concern. And because it's totally depends on the nature of the industry and the type of products you are buying from the supplier or service, as well as the categorization of this product or service. So for example, it is a raw material or a assembled part. If it's raw material, is it related to the oil, gas and gas industry or a chemical part? So there are certain risks assigned to every category. And, or maybe it's outsourcing a machining process. So depending on the type of the product, we can define the standards, and against these standards, we can understand the level of compliance this supplier has. Number three here, reduce risk, of receiving unreliable, low quality products from the supplier. So basically, this is what everyone wants at the end. The supplier or the customer. We want high acceptance rate and a smooth flow of supply without any interruptions caused either by low quality parts or the need for rework or maybe long inspection process due to a lot of defects. So this is basically the very simple form of why we want to audit supply. The indirect ones, the other reasons affected by the supply audit. Number one, gain more confidence in our planning process. And naturally, if we have a stable quality level, or can we say an expected performance by our supplier, our planning process will be more robust. And we will be more confident that we don't have to go through a significant change to the way we do work caused by the low level of quality or unexpected interruption from the supplier side. Because this might affect our delivery and it will cause customer complaints or maybe lost sales in the future. Number two, increase the strength of our supply base or supplier base. Supply base or supplier database, by definition, if in layman's language, means that when an organization selects some vendors or suppliers and makes a pool of them, which needs to be kept in order to decide which supplier from this pool, from this base, to have a short-term supply from, a long-term contract with, or even kept as a second choice in order we need them in the future. This is based on information and coordination among them, and of course, active communication. And the strength in our supply base is to have multiple suppliers who can provide the same part, especially for Class A materials, as per the supply chain or the buyers specialists say about this. Class A materials is the most important materials we have in our, or the core materials to our industry. So what we aim is to provide these materials with the same standards and meet the desired level of quality from multiple suppliers at the same time. For example, if we have encountered performance issue with one key suppliers, we don't panic. Buyers can choose another qualified supplier ready from our base, from our pool, with high level of confidence that our expectations will be met without risk of interruption during the switching process. Or, for example, if we are experiencing a surge in demand and we would like to increase our capacity, can we qualify more suppliers at the right time? Can we provide more than one supplier for raw materials necessary for us, for our production line, in order to meet this surge in demand? In the past 2 years here in the UK, we've seen a lot of interruptions due to suppliers sadly lost their business or forced to close or reduce hours due to the number of people being told to self-isolate, which caused a great delay and disruption in many industries and service. So this is what was one example of how COVID-19 crisis changed the purpose of supplier audits. There was interruptions, there were risks that were lying in our risk register that came into reality. The coronavirus pandemic is testing leaders in every sector. It is really a big challenge that we have never seen before, or most of the leaders never seen before. A challenge that could last for more than we expected. And this uncertainty is the main reason why we have to start changing the way we do work. Leaders in their businesses and organizations who will adapt will help support those organizations during this crisis and prepare them for whatever comes next. So, talking specifically about the supplier audit process, how did COVID-19 crisis change the purpose of this audit? So, number one is the purpose will be no longer to have a stable performance like we used to do in the past. We used to think that stable performance, the comfort zone, means like we have a standard process. We have an ongoing process that doesn't stop. But now we know more than ever that we are looking for more. We're looking for flexible suppliers who can cope with sudden fluctuations in demand. The pandemic accelerated and changed expectations forever. Manufacturers need to purposely shift their investments to technology and innovation that support and meet their customers, where they are and how they want to be engaged. This requires understanding and transforming how they engage their entire ecosystem, all to the benefit of the continuity of the organization itself. More and more customers of manufacturers expect their buying and their service experience to mimic those they encounter with Amazon, for example, or any other online business to consumer commerce sites. With these competitive pressures changing the way we do business activities, including supplier performance management, is a must. So that's why in number 2, auditors should choose other topics to focus on during the QMS audit. For example, change management process should be the main focus and take more time than it used to have. And also, how risks and opportunities are addressed by the supplier's management system is another topic to take into consideration. So instead of putting most of our focus on processes like operational controls and measurement system analysis, auditors need to spend more time understanding the change management process, starting from the request for change, the approval cycle, and implementation and review of the change, and how much time this process takes. Time is an important element auditor should consider from now on. And another topic is the practical approach that the supplier uses in order to address risks and opportunities. Because frankly, now we understand more than ever why and how important the ISO 9001-2015 update was important. How important that update was. Because the emphasis on risks and opportunities is now very, very important and crucial to the survival of the organization. In the next few slides, I'm going to introduce an insight into the future of supplier auditing process, examples of how this process can be improved to cope with this changing world. I'm going to start by, or the first one we should start by is build a dynamic audit checklist. Second one is conduct a proper supplier assessment. This is one of the most important topics nowadays. 3, create an easily accessible live supplier performance dashboard. This is one of the trends really in the last few years, data and data analytics and the use of data in the decision-making process. And lastly, the design of a dynamic multi-stage decision-making approach in supplier audit process. And we will talk in more detail about what do we mean by a multi-stage decision-making process. First, dynamic supplier audit checklist. Okay, what does this mean? What does it mean that we have a dynamic checklist? Most of the companies have a fixed template for supplier audit or a checklist for supplier visits, which they use in every audit, regardless of the purpose or the frequency of this audit. And it's up to the auditor's judgment to decide which parts to skip or to focus on based on the history he has or she has with the supplier himself. But I think we rather put it in a form of a procedure rather than relying on the gut feeling of the auditor himself. So what does it mean, a dynamic supplier audit checklist? It means to create a customized audit content which suits your needs and eliminate unnecessary points, which may lead to a lengthy decision-making process. So these steps, which starts by the planning of the audit, are the steps to follow in order to create a dynamic supplier audit checklist. First, you will identify the purpose of your audit. So the purpose of the audit, either it was a qualification audit or just a normal or an ordinary regular performance review. Is it safety audit or it's a product audit? Each one of them have special requirements which need special or customized checklists. Second is to revise supplier risk assessment. In the recent years, companies started to consider supplier-related risk and threats in their purchasing decisions. In order to survive in today's highly complex, dynamic, and risky business environment. So, reviewing the supplier risk assessment and its content before creating the content of your audit or the checklist of the processes and the standards or the documents you want to take a look at and the time of the audit will help you identify which parts to focus on. So you can move to point number 3 and create a customized audit content tailored to your needs based on the study you have from the supplier risk assessment and based on the purpose of your audit. In this example, you will find a comparison between 3 types or 3 categories of the audit, of supplier audit. 1 is the qualification audit, and 2, periodic performance review audit, and lastly, the product audit. So in the qualification audit, mainly you are dealing with a supplier you've never seen before, or your organization never had this scope with the supplier before. So you're starting a new process, a new relationship with this supplier. So we start by including mainly all the processes to be audited during your visit or your auditing process. You start looking at the control of measuring equipment, the supplier management, manufacturing process control, the concern management, change management and new product introduction, or the control of documents. So basically, it is the same as a normal quality management system audit. But if you have a long relationship with a supplier based on your risk assessment, as we mentioned before, and you have like a periodic performance review audit, do you really have to go through all of these topics once again every year or every 2 years? Of course not. It's total waste of time. What you should focus on: customer complaints. What about your complaints or your material rejection reports for this particular supplier? And maybe extend to other customers and look at the way the supplier handles customer complaints. Performance pitfalls. What if the performance of the supplier have declined in some steps? You should look specifically on these processes, which causes maybe a late delivery on your last shipment. Corrective action follow-up. So if there was a rejection case or late delivery and you requested a corrective action, then this is the time suitable for you to follow up the implementation of the actions related to this case. Risks and opportunities. In order to understand, has the supplier updated his risk register? Has the supplier updated risks and opportunities action plan? Does he review them periodically or not? This is one of the most important things to include in every audit from now on. The third type is the product audit. So if you are talking about a certain type of product, you want to understand, is the supplier capable of producing this product based on your requirement and standards? Then you will look at process capability, for example, equipment availability, capacity study, and non-conformance handling by the supplier, because it's purely technical. Why do you have to get to other parts of the management system, if you are just looking to expand, maybe if there's an existing relationship with the supplier and you want to expand your scope with the supplier to other products or other parts, then it's a total waste of time to include everything, and it will only take of your time and it only delay your decision. The second process I want to talk about is the supplier risk assessment. With companies across the globe focusing on becoming more efficient, supply chains have become extremely vulnerable to risks. Most firms fail to perform an effective supply chain risk assessment before outsourcing their products and services. And a failure to identify and minimize these risks can lead to supply chain disruption and profit losses. And now we can say going out of business. Supplier risk measures have to be defined and incorporated into the supplier selection process to cope with supplier-related uncertainties and threats. That's why it is one of the most important inputs to your supplier quality management system audit is the supplier risk assessment. Because supplier risk is a multidimensional concept and cover various different risk parameters. For example, if we talk about the parameters, geographical location, if you are talking about an overseas supplier, the nature of business or activity, the possibility of business interruption, our relationship with the supplier. Do we have a previous relationship with the supplier? It's something you should consider. You should look at the previous issues. You should look at the company's profile and the reputation in the market. Past delivery performance and past quality performance. And this is really important to understand what are the performance pitfalls. If there are many rejection cases and the supplier creates a careful root cause analysis for each case, you should discuss the outcome of these root causes and the corrective action is implemented as part of your audit. And as a modified failure mode and effects analysis method to select suppliers is to have a similar scoring system for your suppliers based on a score you set for each of one of these parameters for all of your important suppliers. This can help you assign a risk score for each supplier and then prioritize these suppliers based on the risk level associated with each supplier. Supplier risk assessment, of course, should be reviewed periodically in order to be up to date with any internal and external changes which may arise. And not just periodically, it should be reviewed whenever there's a new trend in technology, a new change in the geographical location, for example, any disruption related to any economical or social issues in your country, in your continent, in your province. That's why it's important to keep your risk up to date. And that's why the risk and opportunities process in the supplier side have to be part of your audit. Monitoring suppliers' KPIs. So, as we said, as per the previous slide, supplier risk assessment must consider the supplier's past performance. And the more details we have, the more confidence we gain in our predictions. Of course, if we talk about analytics and the use of data, this is another topic it's a big topic to cover in just one slide. But if we focus about the input from our supplier performance dashboard into our supplier quality management system audit, is that analytics will allow us to make a better business decisions. And that's why it's better to include the outcome of your analytics into your supplier audit. And of course, we understand that manufacturers are accelerating their use of data to improve sales and demand forecasting. That's why companies need accurate information to predict the volume of and volatility of demand as well as supply. That's why most of the companies use high level of analytics in their market analysis, but sometimes forget to include this on the supply side. And this is where we need to change. Understanding and analyzing the data of our supplier base is as important as understanding the market trends. Because with more accurate supply predictions about goods bought from various suppliers, manufacturers can optimize the production lines and inventory levels, which will lead eventually in meeting these changes, trends, or understand and be able to fulfill the market demand. One example to that, Honeywell's transformation strategy include changes how the company generates, stores, and manages data for tracking all the key performance indicators on the market side, on the operation side, and on the supply chain side. The last process I want to talk about is what we call the multi-stage supplier audit methodology, which I would like to look like or have it similar to the toll gate. So this is one of the methods which you can use to optimize your audit process, reduce the decision-making time. So as every or many supply audit processes, you start by sending a self-assessment questionnaire to your supplier and ask the supplier to fill in or answer all the questions himself or she. So here you start using the toolgate methodology, and that is you start evaluating the answers came with the self-assessment against a well-defined criteria, and with the help from the beginning of the risk assessment of the supplier. So for example, if you have the supplier provide answers as well as evidence for every answer he has at the beginning of your process, then it might be a wise decision to take a decision at this stage and not wait for others or for other steps in this process. Why I will have evidence collection if the supplier have primarily provide all the evidence for the questions. And based on the risk assessment, supplier has a high profile, and we had a previous history with the supplier in the past. At this point, it makes no sense to move on to a physical audit or wait to delay these decisions. We can have the decisions, we can have this decision to go on and from the quality management system point of view, give the green light for the supplier and give our decision. Or if an underperforming supplier give us unsatisfactory answers in the self-assessment questionnaire, we shouldn't wait for the supplier to provide evidence, because the supplier maybe have answered unsatisfactory answers to a very, very critical points. That's why we could need to wait for another round. We should disqualify him from the beginning. If not, we then move to the next step. If there is no sufficient evidence from the self-assessment, we should ask for evidence. At this stage, we repeat the same step. We evaluate the evidence in the scope of the self-assessment and the risk assessment, and against a predefined criteria, and then see, can we make a decision yet? If all these factors meets our criteria, then we can give the green light and say that this supply is qualified. If not, then the last resort is to go past this tool gate and go to the next step, the physical or visual tour. So we can have our tour into the manufacturing site of this supplier and see for ourselves and collect evidence ourselves. Then we can have our decision. Then we can have our full supplier audit process. So as we say, in order to cope with these challenges, with the changes in our world, one of the things we should consider in the supplier audit process or supplier qualification process is to find ways how to shorten the time it takes for this process. And of course, it's like any other process. We need to identify and consider the risks and opportunities of this methodology or approach. So if we list the opportunities, we will say that this process will add value to the process, will eliminate the non-value added activities inside this process. We will reduce the cost associated with traveling to supplier site if in fact the supplier will be disqualified anyway. And we'll save the time, we'll reduce the time it takes to make a decision, which is what the business needs at the end. This process will be more efficient, and we will have a sense of flexibility in our process. Our process will not be like a robust one, which have certain number of steps that have to be done every time, no matter what. But on the other side, when we talk about the risks, there is a risk, of course, of a rash decision based on insufficient evidence. And this can be addressed by carefully planning your audit, reviewing the risk register for the supplier, and have a clear, predefined criteria in order for you to make a decision whether to approve or to reject. The second risks for this method is misleading information provided by supplier's team. And I have to say, also making a good research, a good planning for the audit about the reputation of the supplier, about the past experience of the supplier in the same scope will help us avoid such things. And of course, the experience of the auditor who can check the evidence and identify the validity of these evidences. This is the last method I wanted to present here about from the 4 methods that I think will help change the way we do supplier quality management system audits in the future and try to meet the customer's demand and to survive in this challenging market. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions about this presentation, please feel free to contact me on my personal email or through my LinkedIn page. The links for them are in this slide. And thank you very much for watching.
Well, thank you, Aiman Sakr, for that look at the evolution of supplier QMS audits. And that concludes this presentation.